Today, the terror group Hamas declared a day of rage, urging Palestinians in the West Bank and Jerusalem to attack Israelis. Back in Washington, President Obama called on both sides to do more to stop the violence. Joining us in a moment, Charles Krauthammer on the president's message. But first, new details tonight on one of the most shocking attacks so far. As a Palestinian man seen here squatting and wearing a reflective yellow and white vest manages to approach a group of Israeli soldiers and start stabbing one of them by posing as a journalist. Trace Gallagher has more from our West Coast newsroom. Trace?
Megan, this latest attack is a new and grave concern for Israeli defense forces because they work so closely with the media. The attacker, disguised as a Palestinian photojournalist wearing a yellow press vest, had reportedly infiltrated a Hamas television crew. Hamas, based in Gaza, has been deemed a terrorist organization by the U.S. The phony journalist stabbed an Israeli soldier in the back and arms before being shot and killed by other IDF soldiers. The Foreign Press Association is now calling on all Palestinian media organizations to verify who gets press credentials. The attack happened near the West Bank, which, along with Jerusalem, has seen a recent rash of attacks, mostly stabbings. And while the UN Security Council met to discuss how to lower the tension, Israel's new UN ambassador talked about how Palestinian leaders have built an incubator for terror, using television and social media to radicalize their young people, even offering biological tutorials. Watch.
This picture you see here is an example of the kind of text that Palestinian children are being exposed to day in and day out. In school, after school. The picture gives children elaborate instructions on how to stab a Jew.
Overnight, a group of Palestinians also set fire to the tomb of Joseph, a site revered by Jews and Christians. Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas condemned that attack, but Israel says Abbas has done nothing to quell the overall violence. Palestinians accuse Israel of trying to divide the Al-Aqsa Mosque, one of Islam's holiest sites. Better.
Trace, thank you. As we mentioned, President Obama spoke to the situation in Israel from the White House earlier today. Listen.
We condemn in the strongest possible terms violence directed against innocent people and believe that Israel has a right to maintain basic law and order and protect its citizens from knife attacks and violence on the streets. We also believe that it's important for both Prime Minister Netanyahu and Israeli elected officials and President Abbas and other people in positions of power to try to tamp down rhetoric that may feed violence.
Charles Krauthammer is a Fox News contributor and author of the book Things That Matter. Charles, good to see you tonight. So, what do you make of President Obama's response? You heard it in full, ending with, try to tamp down rhetoric. Both sides need to. That may feed the violence or anger.
I think the president's statement is shameful, and it follows on shameful statements by his Secretary of State. This is moral equivalence. The idea that somehow the Israeli leadership, that Netanyahu was using inflammatory rhetoric. We all know how and why they started. This was Hamas. This was also Palestinian Authority. They spread the rumor. They spread the libel. They spread the lie that, as we heard, the Israelis are trying to divide the Al-Aqsa Mosque. They're trying to desecrate it. They're trying to destroy it. They're trying to change the status quo. That is not true whatsoever. It's been amplified. It has not been tamped down at all by the Palestinian Authority, which it should be, and they have encouraged the violence. And then there was also a statement by the State Department spokesman, I think it was yesterday, saying that they condemn the excessive force being used, and there are reports of excessive force. What would we do if there were people running around streets of New York stabbing people on buses? We would be using whatever force is necessary to stop them. You've seen some of the video where people are shot while literally holding the knife with the blood visible on the knife. The idea that there is some equivalence here, I think, is disgraceful. Israel is an ally. Israel is a democracy. It has no interest in ginning up any kind of this violence. We know who's doing it. Why can't the president simply say, these are acts of terror, and we condemn them, they're based on a lie, and we call on the Palestinian leadership to say that it is a lie and to stop the violence?
They won't. And
it's not hard to say. He could have done it. He didn't.
You mentioned the State Department spokesman Kirby, who actually came out and said yesterday, individuals on both sides of this have been proven capable of, and in our view, are guilty of acts of terror. So he is clearly drawing the equivalence between both sides, saying they're both engaging in terrorism.
That in and of itself is a libel. Yes, there have been terror attacks by Jews. They are extremely infrequent. When they happen, they are immediately condemned by everyone in the Israeli parliament, from left all the way to right, including the government. The people are pursued and apprehended and arrested. What happens on the Palestinian side? As we saw, they encourage, they teach their children how to stab a Jew. They spread these stories about them to gin up the violence. They make it an instrument of the state. Hamas does openly. Mahmoud Abbas and the other do it in a slightly more sophisticated way. They've been using terror for 30 years. We know that. And for a spokesman for the United States to imply that there is some equivalent in the use of terror, I think is shocking.
Why don't we say what you just said? Why doesn't President Obama make it that clear? And by the way, Ted Cruz is now calling on John Kerry to resign, to step down because of the comments he has made, drawing an equivalence between both sides here.
I'm not going to probe the psyche of the president. I will leave that to psychiatrists. All I can say is his behavior has been the most unfriendly, unsympathetic to Israel of any president since the founding of the state in 1948.
But everybody always points to the massive amounts of money that we give them.
Every time he has an opportunity to demonstrate that, he does.
Everyone points to the massive amounts of money we give to Israel, the support of Iron Dome and so on, to counter that argument.
Well, I mean, that's been the U.S. military, Israeli military, have had a close relationship and support for 60 years. If he were to stop that, that would be an amazing, that would be a stab in the back of Israel. That would be a way to abandon it to its fate. So I wouldn't expect any president, no matter how unsympathetic, to create a crisis of that sort. And there would be a huge reaction in public opinion, especially among Democrats, of course, and Republicans, if he tried to cut off the aid to Israel. So to say we support Iron Dome, which incidentally is going to help the United States, Israel is the testing field. The Israelis are the ones who test out the new technology. We will use that in our encounters with terrorists, in our encounters with other forces abroad. So it isn't as if it's a gift. It's something that we're going to use. Of course it helps Israel. But that is on every issue that counts, from the Iranian bomb, where we are going, that the U.S. is, under Obama, has gone against every segment of the Israeli political spectrum. It isn't just the right-wing extreme, as Obama pretends. They're all against this, all the way to the moral equivalence that we heard today.
Charles, thank you. Well, NBC News